There we go.
This is Sharon. Can you hear me?
Yes,
Loud and
ma'am.
clear.
Thank you.
Are we ready, Anthony? It appears we have a quorum.
Yes, sir.
All right, then I would like to call to order the regular board meeting of the North County Transit District for December 16, 2021 at 2 p.m.
Okay.
Before we begin, I'd like to inform members of the public who may be viewing the meeting on the district's YouTube page that in order to make a public comment during the meeting, you must connect to the meeting using the Zoom link provided on the agenda. And you must also register with the clerk by sending an email to clerk@nctd.org with a name and/or phone number and which item that you would like to speak on. And with that, I would like to ask Anthony Flores, the clerk of the board, to please call roll.
Yes, sir. Board Member Rodriguez,
I'm here.
Board Chair Krantz,
Here.
Board Member Contreras,
Present.
Board Member McNamara,
Here.
Board Member Desmond, Board Member Gasterland,
Here.
Board Vice Chair Edson,
Here.
Board Member Jenkins,
Here.
Board Member Botpatal,
Here.
Board Member Von Wilpert.
Present.
That concludes roll call, sir.
Okay, very good. Thank you. And I'd like to especially welcome Councilmember Rodriguez, now representing Oceanside on the North County Transit District Board. And I would like, sir, to ask you to please lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
Okay. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, for liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. And now, Anthony, will please provide a safety briefing and review the evacuation procedures.
Yes, sir. For those here in the building, in the event of an emergency, I will dial 911. In the event of an evacuation, please exit the building using the stairs. Do not use the elevator. Once cleared of the building, please do not re-enter unless told to do so by emergency personnel. We have fire extinguishers and fire alarms on each floor of this building. We also have a portable defibrillator located on the first floor and staff on hand trained on CPR procedures. That concludes my safety brief, sir.
Excellent, thank you. And are there any changes to the agenda?
There are none, sir.
How about public comments? Has anybody signed up for public comments?
We do have one public comment register for agenda item 19. I will call them when their time is ready.
Excellent. Before we get into the specific items on the agenda, just want to outline the meeting protocols so that we can have as efficient as possible a meeting. Hold your comments, please, until after the agenda item has presented, and then when the time comes for board members' comments or questions, please use the Zoom raise hand feature, and I will call you in the order received. Hey, Anthony, can you promote Supervisor Desmond, please?
Sir, I just did.
Okay, great. All right, we are going to begin this meeting with employee service recognition. And there are 23 employees who have worked for NCTD for more than 30 years. Very impressive. Their dedication and loyalty to the district is very much appreciated. And with that, Laura Cote, the Chief Administrative Officer, is going to review this item.
Thank you, Chair. So we are here today for one of the most important events we do each year, to recognize the men and women, all of the employees who have truly dedicated themselves to serving our residents, particularly over so many years. As Chair Kranz mentioned, we have 23 today that we're honoring. And these folks are with MV Transportation, as well as with North County Transit District, and are being honored today for their devotion of 30 years or more to work for the district. The district was formed back in September of 1975 and was initially called the North San Diego County Transit Development Board. Then on August 30th, 2005, California Governor Arnold Schwarzenegger signed into law AB 1238, which renamed the agency to the North County Transit District. Our mission is to deliver safe, convenient, reliable, and user-friendly public transportation services. And as you can see here, the district operates 5 modes of transit: Breeze buses, coaster trains, Sprinter hybrid rail, Lyft paratransit services, and our flex services. Our workforce is currently 828 people strong, and it's comprised of both contracted employees as well as employees that are directly hired with North County Transit District. As you can see here, 60% of our overall employee population are those that support bus operations. 18% are in rail, 17% are our direct employees, and 5% are in facilities. Employees at the district serve in a variety of roles, and the 23 being recognized today are all within positions that support our bus operations. On behalf of our employees, we are pleased for them to be recognized by our board of directors, which offers an opportunity to connect our frontline service employees with each of you, and as a way to promote and support our highly dedicated employees. They will also be recognized at holiday events this week, both at NCTD and at MV. And at this time, we would like for you to meet those that are being acknowledged today. Here is a slide of all of them. And we also have produced a video that has been great. We've been able to meet with all of the folks that are being honored. And I hope you appreciate this as much as we have. So if Anthony, if you could go ahead and roll the video.
I've been working here since 1986.
I started in 1987.
1988.
I applied for a clerk typist position back in 1986.
I was looking for a part-time job.
It was supposed to be a temporary.
It was a 5-year plan.
I just thought it'd be a fun job.
Growing up on a farming and ranching community, just fixing stuff was like an everyday thing.
In high school, I became interested in working on engines.
What got me here is I like driving.
I would always be talking to the bus drivers because I rode the bus to college.
Got my training at a trade school, and then after that, I joined the military.
I'm fixing the old truck to the farm equipment, and that's where I mostly learned how to do mechanic work.
I've always been in maintenance, but I've been in facilities and fleet as well.
My friend who owned a motorcycle shop at the time in Oceanside, he was a bus driver. And he told me, hey, why don't you put in for a bus servicer? And I'm like, what's that? And he goes, those are the guys who clean out the buses, fuel them, minor repairs and stuff like that. And I'm like, huh, okay, sounds interesting. So I went ahead and applied. 2 months later, I was working for NCTD.
I got out of the military, got this job. In the military, they tell you, hey, live on unemployment for you. You get paid the same you do as the military. Well, I found that wasn't true because my first 2-week check was $41. So I said, I got to find a job. And then a friend, he had just got out of the military. He said, let's go drive a bus.
My kids were in this program called Head Start. And in that program, they started providing us like tools, like I had a food handler's card. And then the last go around was taking a class in school bus driving. And that's how I started in 1984.
I've gone into working on the fare box, the camera systems, and now with the newer fleets coming in, there's more electronic devices.
We went from the analog stage where we used to have to manually look at the money and everything was counted in dump system to now everything is moving to the digital technology.
Newer buses handle a lot better.
We love our new seats. Those are very comfy. I like the low floor buses. They are closer to the curb and you do kneel them. And it's easier for passengers to get on and off.
The new destination signs, automatic passenger counters, drive cam, mobile eye, Zonar systems.
I do like our new radio system. You can actually hear what's going on now.
We love the fact that the buses have cameras.
Everything's electronically counted. We have the new Pronto system, which is a lot quicker.
We started with diesel buses, then we go to CNG, now we go with hydrogen buses, and eventually electric buses. So that's something we're wanting for me to learn, and that's the biggest changes for us.
Part of my days I spent training the younger technicians on what I know about the buses so that they become better technicians.
It's not about driving, it's about the people. I just love to communicate with people, and that's just who I am.
A lot of the passengers I know ever since I've been here is rewarding to see a lot of the kids when they were young and they're growing up to go to college and being productive citizens. So that's rewarding because I know a lot of the kids and parents out there ever since I've started here.
I like meeting different people.
You get to know a lot of your passengers, you know, as they come and go. And we've seen a lot of like the mothers that were bringing their kids when they were little. And now some of those kids go to school and they still remember us.
Some people have retired and they come out to ride the bus just to ride around with me. They don't even work no more.
The little kids, the middle school, and now they get on my bus with kids, with their own kids. You say, oh my God, lifestyle. And that's the more surprising thing that happens to me.
I watch them during their pregnancy and I watch their kids grow up.
I've seen a lot of people grow up. Little kids now ride the bus, now they're adults.
I have in the past got out of my seat if I have 5 minutes, taken the baby from this person's hands and rocked it because I knew the mother was stressed. And the woman spoke Spanish. And do you know, about 12 years later, this kid got on my bus and he was a good kid. And then he said his mother, I said, oh, why aren't you getting off here? He goes, my mother and sister coming here. She got on the bus and she said to him in Spanish, she says, that's the lady that held you when you were 2 months old.
What I'm doing, I'm actually serving the public that's out there that rely on public transportation. They're able to ride the bus to where they're getting to get to work, get home.
And if I could assist them in any which way, I try to do my best.
Sometimes they don't know which direction to go, which bus to catch, and if you speak it then in Spanish, that's easier for them and also for me to tell them which direction is better for them.
You feel good after you help a passenger, the needs they may have, like wheelchairs and what have you.
Taking them shopping, buying them groceries. Christmas time was the best because I would make things and passengers would make things and we would exchange them on the bus and we'd sing Christmas carols. My bus was off the charts.
I think she's had baby showers on her bus with passengers.
For the baby showers is to help them get more gifts for them.
If you're doing the same route day in and day out, you get accustomed to the same people that board the bus.
They just became buddies with the bus drivers and they come in and they hang out with us. Like today, I got 2 people that are constant that I've had for like at least 6 years on that 313. So I know them, I know where they get on, I know where they get off. And they don't even have to ring the bell.
The time I met Mark Milner from Adam 12, a TV show I used to watch when I was living in Ohio. He took my bus, he caught the bus in Cardiff. He was going to the Del Mar racetrack. And I asked a passenger to ask him his name because I was too nervous. And she was like, no. And so I just got up the nerve to ask him his name. And when he said Mark Milner, I said, Adam 12. And he said, yes.
And then you see passengers that been riding over 21 years. They haven't seen you for a while because you changed routes or whatever. And they're glad to see you.
Some of them still call me. I'm like, used to remember my phone numbers because they have moved away. So they'll just call, check up on me, whatever.
I met a gentleman who was in the service. He was homeless for 20 years. I got him talking. I helped him get some help, disability. I helped him get housing. And he was just riding the bus. And that was a friendship for over 20 years.
Working here at NCTD has afforded me to raise my 6 beautiful daughters.
Decent job, provide for your family.
Provide for my family and see my kids grow up and have children of their own.
I raised a son and a daughter.
So I was able to set my wife and my 3 daughters to college.
It provided education for my kids. I got a daughter, she's a nurse. The other one's a software engineer.
NCTD helped me put my children through school and college.
I love the schedule. Give me opportunity to take care of my kids.
The benefits, especially with my wife, she needs the medical because of her migraines.
I got vehicles, I got a roof. Yeah. Kids are fed. They're all happy. I can get presents when I need presents. It works out okay.
I think working here brought the best out of my children.
As a single mom, when I came here, I was able to have one job to support my family.
The schedule helped me to keep my kids, watch my kids, and since they're little, go to school for my kids, homework, cook for them. Now my daughter is married 2 weeks ago.
I come back here day after day because I do love my job. I love the public. I love dealing with the public. I love to help people. I'm just that kind of person.
I get to come to work. I get to drive the bus. I get to see the people. When I used to get off of work, I used to get off of work after 8 hours, and then I would drive my dad's off for another 10 hours just to go see him on the weekends and then drive back. So yeah, I like driving.
I work outdoors and I love being outside.
It's fun. I come here every morning, see most of the coworkers, we laugh, we joke around, and when I feel good, I go out there and I perform my job real well.
I enjoy coming to work. That's the most important thing. I enjoy it, coming to work and helping the mechanics and dealing with all the vendors and everybody. I love working with people.
It's not easy getting up at 2 in the morning to be at work at 3:30, but I love doing it.
The guys that I work with, the technicians that I work with, they become like my brothers and my family.
All the other drivers are like family.
The friends that work here, that's where I get all my energy. You meet a lot of nice people. You meet a lot of nice employees too that you become friends with.
I got to meet my husband here.
Hey, I love this place, and I love a lot of people here, just like family.
Well, I recruited my wife. She has 21 years also as a driver.
I like my job. Just some of the people you've met here that, you know, you become really good friends with. And, you know, we always look out for each other. They're good people.
I've met a lot of people, a lot of good people.
I mean, that's my extended family.
My hat's off to the drivers.
Seeing my coworkers, their families, I've seen them from little kids all the way up through college.
It's actually like a home for me. And I miss a lot of the friends that have gone. The togetherness, almost like a family, you know. We do parties together, we hang out and stuff like that. That's what I like.
It's been wonderful getting to know different personalities, different positions over the years. I would say I've made some wonderful friendships.
She loves her job.
I love my job because I get to meet people every day. And from there, sometimes it becomes more than a friendship.
Just the friendships have evolved, seeing them from the time before they were even pregnant to their children graduating from high school has been one of the highlights, I would say, in my career here.
In all the routes that I was on, everybody just looked out for each other.
We provide service for the public, good, reliable transportation for the public. When I see people out there waiting for the buses, I'm proud of it because I'm part of it, helping these people to get a safe, reliable service. So that motivates me every day to come to work.
I was 24 years old when I started working for NCTD.
31 years.
32 years.
32 years.
32 years, 33 years.
33 years.
34 years.
34 plus years.
34 and a half years.
35 years.
35 years.
I've been here for 35 years.
You never would have thought that you were going to be at one spot for that long. It's amazing.
I didn't come here thinking I was going to be a female Ralph Cramden.
Still here.
This one make fun of me because they said after middle school I came to drive.
The Lord willing and keeps having me here, I'll be here for about another 10 years.
Plan on staying here a little bit longer. My license expires in 4 years. And if God permits, who knows, I might stay here longer. We love our job.
I'm still trying to complete my mission.
I plan on being here until my daughters tell me I can leave.
Be honest with you, I don't know when I'm going to retire. As long as my health's good, I'm going to keep going. See, because I enjoy coming to work. I enjoy working with the mechanics. I just enjoy coming to work. It doesn't feel like a long time. If you like your job, it's not a long time.
What my body takes, because this is for me therapy.
I probably see myself working maybe 5 more, and I'll decide in a few years.
Oh my God, I wish I could give you the answer for that because I've been leaving for the past 8 years.
I plan on being here at least another 15 years.
I want to be the last cat here. I like people.
I'm working for over 31 years, and I'll be working here another 31 years, if God will let.
This is right here. I have my friends and I have my husband close by, and I don't need any more things.
I want to thank North County Transit for giving me the opportunity to become a professional coach operator.
Thankful to NCTD for giving me the opportunity to be part of it, and also opportunity to spend more time with my kids.
Over the 30 years I've been here, I've met a lot of good people. I've been able to do a lot of good things, seen a lot of stuff, enjoy the job, and to do it again.
Well, that's just an amazing video providing information about wonderful people. I had the opportunity to watch that video in my office yesterday, and I was glad that I was by myself. And I was glad that I was able to have a little bit of a moment of reflection from the day-to-day that we do at the district, that sometimes, you can lose sight of the amazing people who we work with and amazing things that they do on a day-to-day basis, and how this job really helps support those folks in terms of helping their families achieve all of the goals that each of us aspire for. So it's every year, this is one of the highlights. And if you're a transit CEO, if your reason for doing what you do is not about those folks, you're in the wrong business. So really happy the staff did this, really happy that we have the people who we do have at the district.
Yes, thank you. That was a wonderful video. I'm overwhelmed with gratitude for all of those folks who have dedicated their lives to providing public transit. Most of the people who ride on public transit are dependent upon it. And so the importance of their work is pretty clear. And it's obvious that each of these people takes a tremendous amount of pride in the work that they do. They all seem to have a similar personality. They came across to me as pretty happy-go-lucky, and their expressions of appreciation for their riders was certainly heartwarming. So, Laura, thank you for the video presentation, and thanks to all of those folks that are listed there for your many years of service. And it's my hope that there will be many more years to come. So thank you for that. Okay, and Laura, looks like we're moving on to item number 2, which is another presentation recognizing a gentleman who has a tremendous amount of public service, and it's with a different organization, but an organization that is very important to us. So, Laura?
Thank you, Chair Kranz. I feel like I'm having the best time at this board meeting so far, being able to honor so many amazing people. So I am really pleased to introduce this item, which is recognizing my very good friend, Jim Linthicum, who I have had the true honor to work with over a lot of years. Jim is retiring from the San Diego Association of Governments as the Chief of Capital Programs and Regional Services, where he worked for 18 years. His career spans more than 40 years, and right out of college, he started working for Caltrans on a transit project called the South Line at that time, which is the trolley line that serves the US-Mexico border. Fast forward to today, where he led the team that built the largest infrastructure project in the San Diego region, the Mid-Coast Trolley Blue Line extension. And I'm sure many of you know that opened to the public just a few weeks ago in late November. Jim has been a strong partner with NCTD throughout the years, and we are proud to have partnered with him on implementing many regionally significant projects. Most notably, the successful completion of double tracking 7 miles of the Lausanne Coastal Rail Corridor and the Sprinter Light Rail Project, which remains one of the most cost-effective rail projects throughout the country. And so, Jim, I know you're not here today, although you'll be saying a few words in a moment, but we do have the certificate of recognition for you that I will get to you when I see you next. But we're awfully proud to honor you today. And at this time, we would like to ask Jim to say a few words.
Yeah, thank you very much, Laura. Wow, this is very humbling. And I'll tell you, hearing those words is humbling. Seeing that video is really humbling. Like Laura said, my very first big construction project right out of college was the trolley line down to San Ysidro. And the last one was, as she said, the Mid-Coast Trolley to UCSD and UTC. But in between those two great projects, I was lucky enough to have some involvement in almost every single Transnet 1 and Transnet 2 projects. And, Mid-Coast was much more than just a trolley project. You always hear it as just, it's the Mid-Coast Trolley, but it was a whole suite of projects. And there was highway work, there was a long bike path, and there was about $300 million of improvements to the Lausanne corridor, including a couple miles more of double track and a bridge replacement. The bridge replacement of that ancient bridge over the San Diego River, down just north of Old Town. And you hear a lot of us talk, some of you might have heard me talk in the media or, at our board meeting about the success of Mid-Coast is due to the incredible partnerships we developed, and we did. And that is the biggest single factor for the success of Mid-Coast with those partnerships. But because of the Lausanne work and the fact that the southern half of the trolley project was entirely in the NCTD operating right-of-way, we couldn't have been anywhere near as successful without the partnerships of our entire team developed with the NCTD team. And I anticipate that, that partnership is going to result in many, many, many more improvements throughout the entire NCTD service area in all the years to come. I've been blessed with incredible staff. You all have great staff, but in my current position now as a chief deputy, I don't get a chance to work with many of them, but I do work with 3 of them in particular that I'd like to single out. First is Colleen Windsor, who I understand produced that incredible video we just saw. She is an incredible communications professional who taught me about the media and how to do outreach for these capital projects that we spend billions of dollars building. And I can't thank her enough for that. The second person I'd like to call out is who you just heard from, Laura Cote. With your virtual meetings, some of you might not have had the opportunity to work with Laura, but she is the best in the business. We worked together for a lot of years at Sandag, and she has made me a much better person, a much better leader, a much better manager than I was before we ever met. And finally, your executive director, your chief executive, Matt Tucker. Matt and I do a lot of brainstorming. We do a lot of collaboration. Sometimes he has to listen to me rant about something. Sometimes I get to listen to him rant about something, and we don't always agree, but there's a partnership there that assumes that we're going to work things out, and we always do. And that's good for the region. I'm going to miss working on all these great capital projects. I have capital projects in my blood. That's all I've done for 42 years, and it's been wonderful. It's been my life, but it is definitely time to move on and bring some new blood and some fresh ideas to the table at Sandag. So thank you very much for this recognition. It is truly humbling, and I really appreciate it.
Thank you, Jim.
Mr. Chair, I'm going to say a couple of things about Jim. I think I wrote down about 4 points to make. So Jim, I actually did some work. The first thing I would say about Jim, he is focused on getting things done and solving problems. If you don't know Jim, that's kind of a core of who he is. The second thing that I'm going to mention about Jim is that he is part of the National Conflict Resolution Center. And you will hear that kind of if you talk to Jim enough. And I kept thinking about it is that that's a really good skill to have working at Sandag. The third point that I'll make is that Jim, he talks a lot. I mean, he talks as much as I do, and that's a lot. Most people maybe not know that, but he does talk a lot. But the last point that I will make about Jim, he's a good guy. I've enjoyed working with Jim. We work through really complex issues. Sometimes we're frustrated with each other, but the key thing is that we always pull back, just as Jim said, towards focusing in on problem solving, being collaborative as possible, looking at the big picture. I've really enjoyed working with Jim. You know, one of the things that I'm seeing more and more is that people that I've worked with for years starting to retire, and us losing a lot of kind of this whole thought process of how do we collaborate together? How do we partner? How do we disagree and move forward? And, you know, I hate to see Jim go. I get concerned a little bit about who's my back channel to work through things at Sandak going in the future. But I do wish him well in the future. It's been a great experience working with him. I don't think the journey for us ends here, but I do want to tell him on behalf of NCTD staff, much appreciated, a great experience working and getting to know you better. Thanks, Jim.
Thanks, Matt.
Yes, thank you. And I'm assuming that you both had the opportunity to rant about me a little bit over the years. Both have been intimately involved with the double tracking across the San Leo Lagoon, replacing that bridge there, double tracking Chesterfield Drive and putting in the quiet zone there. All great work. And the people in Cardiff are very much appreciative of the efforts that went into silencing train horns in that stretch of the track. So I will remember you for that very fondly, Jim. And I think that to me, the most critical part of losing people with as much experience as yours is the institutional history that goes out the door with it. And so, you know, and I know that there have been several retirements out of Sandag. And so my hope is that you've passed along as much information as you can so that the folks that will follow behind you can have that history and understand the efforts that have gone into improving our public transit system. So you enjoy your retirement. Thank you for all that you've done, and you've earned some rest. So with that, I bid you adieu.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
All right.
Tony, if you don't mind, I just want to say, Jim, congratulations and thank you on behalf of the city of San Diego for the Midcoast Trolley Extension. It's been going very well. Our ridership up is up by quite a bit. So congratulations to a great project, and we wish you all the best.
Thank you very much. And I got to tell you, the city of San Diego, the entire Midcoast project is inside the city of San Diego limits, and also a great partnership at the executive level and also at the staff level.
Wonderful.
Board Member Gasterlin, did you want to add some words?
Yes, I want to thank Jim Linthicum for the past year. He and I have met in advance of every Sandag meeting. And now that I'm hearing that Jim and Matt fight with each other for how much they can talk, I've thought in some of these meetings, I've out-talked you, Jim. So I'm really glad for you as you make this next move. And I'm truly grateful for your time that you've given me in how to really be a good board member for both Sandag and for NCTD, which you have done. So thank you for your coaching, your mentorship, and your collegiality.
Thank you, Mayor.
Okay, thank you. With that, we will move on to items B and C, which are the minutes for the regular board meeting of November 18, 2021, and consent items 3 through 16. May I have a combined motion to approve the minutes and those?
Actually, I would like to pull item 16.
Okay, so that would leave us a motion for the meeting minutes of the November 18th, 2021 meeting and consent items 3 through 15. Do I have a motion?
I see another hand up.
Board Member Rodriguez.
Yes, I would like to pull item 15.
15. So we're whittling down. We're now the minutes and items 3 through 14. Is there a motion for approval of those items?
Jenkins will move to approve.
Gasterland, I'll second.
On the motion of Board Member Sharon Jenkins, seconded by Board Member Terry Gasalan to approve the minutes of the regular board meeting of November 18th, 2021 and consent items 3 through 14. Board Member Bapatel, how do you vote?
Aye.
Board Member Gasalan?
Aye.
Board Chair Krantz?
Aye.
Board Member McNamara?
Aye.
Board Member Rodriguez?
Rodriguez, yes.
Board Member Desmond?
Aye.
Board Member Jenkins?
Aye.
Board Vice Chair Edson?
Aye.
Board Member Contreras? Motion passes with all board members present voting yes.
All right, very good. Thank you. So that takes us to item number 15, or do we take that at the end of the meeting?
We will take
Is that
that
my call?
at the end of the meeting, sir.
All righty, moving into other business items 17 and 18. And there are, on these items, Laura Cote, the Chief Administrative Officer, is going to review item number 17. It's been an item we've considered every month since September regarding whether we want to continue holding virtual board meetings. In addition to considering whether to extend the virtual meeting resolution for another 30 days, the board meeting in January is more than 30 days from today. The board, based on the recent developments with the new COVID variant, will also need to hold a special meeting virtually in the month of January before the continuing resolution expires to decide whether we would like to hold the January regular meeting virtually or to resume in-person meetings. Anthony, I think you've already reached out for dates and times for the special board meeting. And with that, I will turn it over to Laura to present.
Thank you, Chair. So this item is asking the board to consider the option of holding virtual meetings through January 16th of next year, according to Assembly Bill 361, or to resume meetings in person. So as mentioned at prior meetings, Governor Newsom signed AB 361 into law in September, which modified the provisions of the government code related to teleconference public meetings. The key provisions are noted in the attached resolution, and highlights of those are also noted on the screen here. The board is required to assert continuing findings every 30 days should you wish to continue holding meetings virtually. So this action is intended to be placed on each agenda during the state of emergency, which is currently scheduled through March of 2022. As an update regarding COVID, the San Diego County's most recent weekly update noted that local hospitals are seeing a gradual uptick in COVID-related admissions, with 371 listed Tuesday compared to 336 1 week earlier. The 7-day average case rate has continued to climb, reaching 21 cases per 100,000 residents compared to 12.1 on December 8th. Also, I wanted to mention that as a result of the governor's mandate, NCTD has reinstated an indoor mask mandate for all employees, regardless of vaccination status. Last month at your board meeting, I mentioned, and as the chair just mentioned, that a special meeting would be required in advance of the board meeting in January. This is due to how the 30-day approvals have been lining up each month. The 30 days comes directly from the legislation from the governor. So in other words, the 30-day limitation would not take us far enough to cover the span of time in between today and January's board meeting. However, we are asking for a special meeting in January in order to understand if you would like to continue virtually or resume in person. And so if you choose to extend this 30 days, it would allow that special meeting to be held virtually. So the recommendation before you is to consider one of two alternatives that are noted on the slide, and I'll read them. One, adopt resolution number 21-10 proclaiming a local emergency, re-ratifying the proclamation of a state of emergency and reauthorizing remote teleconference meetings of the legislative bodies of the North County Transit District in compliance with Assembly Bill 361, effective December 17th, 2021 through January 16th, 2022. Or number two, resume in-person meetings effective tomorrow, December 17th, 2021. That concludes my presentation. Be happy to answer any questions you have at this time.
Board Member Rodriguez.
Yes, the city of Oceanside has been, we haven't stopped in-person meetings. We've been doing in-person meetings. As the largest North County city, I think it's important to meet in person, and we can follow health and safety protocols. And so I would like to hear with other board members, but I'm apt to go with option 2. And that's my, that's my feeling on the matter, but I want to hear what other members have to say.
Okay, thank you. Board Member Contreras.
I'm actually on the Breeze bus right now. So hopefully you can hear me properly, but I do believe that we need to extend our teleconferencing with the new variant. I myself, we've been conducting council meetings in person. However, that's something that we're going to have to reconsider. So I think we need to extend the timeline so that we could have our special meeting and reassess what the situation is there. And so I would be in favor of staff's recommendation to extend the 30-day period and to have a special meeting in January so we can take up this issue again and see where we're at that point. So I do make a motion.
All right, so there's a motion and
I'll second. This is
the motion is it's for the staff didn't make any recommendations, but I think you're saying adopt option 1, which is to proclaim the local emergency and re-ratify the state of emergency and meet in person.
That is correct.
All right, and I believe it's Board Member Bhat Patel that seconded.
I did, and I'm happy to make comments after the folks that have raised their hands. So
okay, Board Member Vice Chair Edson.
Yes, I actually was going to second that motion, but thank you for doing so, Dr. Bhat Patel. For the reasons that Board Member Contreras mentioned, I believe that it's safest at this point to wait and continue to evaluate the situation as it evolves. So I'm in support of the motion.
Board Member Gasterlin.
Thank you. You'll recall that last month I was encouraging us to consider trying one meeting in person and checking it out. And what happened after that? Well, Omicron happened. And I would be urging us again to try one meeting out. However, there are uncertainties with Omicron. We know it's highly transmissible. And what's happening at UCSD Health System, where I have access to a lot of information and records, is the hospital beds are increasing in occupancy, and Omicron is as bad a disease if you're a person who's going to get COVID and land in the hospital. So we know that. And for that reason, this month, I support continuing to stay remote.
Thank you. Board Member Desmond.
Well, thank you. I'm going to be supporting this motion only because I do not think the emergency still exists. It's Omicron, even though the cases are up, I don't think it's as, the symptoms aren't as bad, and people who, want to get the vaccine have already gotten it by this point in time. I just don't want to be meeting, having meetings where everybody's masked up. It's very clumsy. You can't hear half of the time. So I'm in favor of the remote meetings. I'm not in favor of extending the emergency, but looks like I'm going to have to vote in favor of this so that we can still meet remotely is my only effort on this part. Thanks.
All right, Dr. Bhat Patel.
Sure, thank you. And I would say, we similarly in our city just revisited this past week, and our emergency services director and our fire chief mentioned that, that they feel it would be best for us to remain remote in our city, just based on all of the different cases that we're seeing. So based on the information that was shared with regards to the data and everything, that would be the reason why I would also, move forward with it, and I seconded this motion. So that's where I'm at. Thank you.
All right, thank you. And I would add that the council chambers in Oceanside and in Vista specifically are very nice facilities with high ceilings and a lot of air circulation, which I think is really important. The bunker at the NCTD office building is none of those things. And so, I am inclined to support the resolution. I appreciate Board Member Rodriguez, your efforts to kind of get past this virus as a pandemic and move into the endemic world, because it's important, I think, that we learn how to live with it. But I also don't think that it's probably a good idea at this point to take the risk that's associated with the uptick in infections and the confines of the boardroom at NCTD. I see your hand is up, Board Member Rodriguez. Did you want to make more comments? No. Board Member
No.
Jenkins.
I just have a question. Is it possible, if there's any board members who would like to go into NCTD during the meeting, to do that, or is it all or nothing?
Maybe Laura could speak to that. I believe you'd be participating from your laptop via Zoom, even if you were in the chambers. I don't think that they, have the ability to share the single camera for multiple people, but maybe Laura could speak to that.
Yes, I can. So there is no prohibition at this time unless the chair has a difference of opinion. And what we would be requesting, of course, since we do have the mask mandate in place, that masks be worn unless speaking or drinking or eating. And also it would be a hybrid meeting. So we would ask that a laptop be used in order to accommodate the best use of the technology that we have available.
Okay, thank you.
All right, Anthony, we have a motion and a second, so here we go.
On the motion of Board Member Karina Contreras, seconded by Board Member Priya Bapatal, to adopt resolution number 21-10, reauthorizing remote meetings. Board Member Bapatal, how do you vote?
Aye.
Board Member Gastelum?
Aye.
Board Chair Krantz?
Yes.
Board Member McNamara?
Aye.
Board Member Rodriguez?
Rodriguez, no.
Board Member Desmond?
Aye.
Board Member Jenkins?
Aye.
Board Vice Chair Edson?
Yes.
Board Member Contreras?
Aye.
Motion passes with all board members present voting yes. Board Member Rodriguez votes no.
Okay. Excellent. Chris Orlando, the Chief of Advocacy, is going to take item number 18. Item number 18. Chris is the Chief of Advocacy, Marketing, and Communications. Lots of different duties, lots of hats being worn. And Yoon Park Lynch, Chief Financial Officer, are going to review this item. And it's a presentation regarding potential changes to the Transnet ordinance. It's an item of significant importance to the district, as it will directly impact our ability to provide improved sprinter and coaster services from both a capital and operating perspective. I've had the opportunity, along with Vice Chair Edson and staff, to discuss some of these key matters with Sandag, and North County elected officials and key stakeholders need to be focused and unified to ensure that our taxpayers are properly represented and receive the benefits specified in the Transnet ordinance. And with that, I will turn it over to Mr. Orlando, Chief Orlando.
Thank you very much, Chair Krantz. This is informational item only. There is no action asked of the board at this point. It's just information for the board to have. It's intended to provide an overview of the proposed changes to the Transnet ordinance and an update on the current funding projections. To start with just a bit of overview on Transnet, it was adopted first in 1987 and then extended in November 2004 through the year 2048. It's a half-cent sales tax within the county of San Diego. It established funding streams by category and through the Transnet ordinance where those funds would be allocated. Sandag has recently proposed changes to the ordinance that would affect how those funding streams are allocated. Concurrently, SANDAG, NCTD, and MTS are working to address a shortfall in the 8.1% of funding within the Transnet ordinance that's designated for transit operations. Just for a little orientation for the board, this is how the Transnet flow of funds works. You can see here the various categories of funding and the percentages allocated through the ordinance. Much of the money that comes through NCTD is both through the major corridor number, the 38% on the bottom left for the capital projects, and then the 8.1%, which is for new major corridor transit operations on the middle right in the purple. SANDAG recently presented this slide to its board. It is a overview of the revenue projections that were currently projected in 2002 for the SANDAG measure to produce, and then the current projections. The slide's a little confusing because they did it in 2002 dollars, but when you look at this slide, you see that the revenue projections in 2020 dollars are $13.3 billion versus what they thought they would be in 2002 at $21.8 billion. SANDAG attributes this difference primarily to lower population within the county. The population is not as it was projected at that time, is the primary reason, but also inflation is played into this gap. The green bars on the bottom show the actual collections. You can see some dips in that cycle for the recessions that have occurred, and then the projection going forward in the purple line. So this is the revenue for the overall program. So SANDAG recently proposed a number of changes to the ordinance. There's a table here, next 2 slides. This also appears in your staff report. It's complicated, so I'd encourage you to take a closer look at it. There are not a lot of details around these projected changes. They've more been broad categories of changes they'd like to make. So we wanted to highlight a few for your information. The first, number 1, is they are reconsidering the overall expenditure plan. This could mean the advancement or elimination of certain projects. So they are re-looking at the chart that I showed you previously, the flow chart. Number 5, the transit operations funding, the 8.1% that's designated for new transit operations. They are considering how to manage that fund. As we'll talk about in a moment, there's a significant shortfall in that particular fund item. And so there's a desire to look at how those funds are allocated. And then on the next slide, item 6, SANDAG has also suggested looking at the transit operator eligibility. So currently within the ordinance, to maintain eligibility for Transnet funds, both MTS and NCTD must limit operating cost increases to the consumer price index amount. And so SANDAG is looking at changing that eligibility requirement. They've not stated what the new eligibility requirements would be, and that could potentially impact our funding allocations. So I'm going to put this slide up again because I want to talk a little bit more about the 8.1 for major corridor projects where we get our transit operations funding. So section 4B of the ordinance allocates 8.1% of the Transnet funds for operating costs for new or expanded congestion relief transit projects within the major corridors. So a couple things of note here. These are specifically within the major corridors, and they're specifically designed for congestion relief. You see here the list of projects that was identified in the ordinance. The first 2 are the coaster expansion, which we started in October, just in October, and then the future expansion of Sprinter Headways is also included, as well as a number of projects for MTS, including the Mid-Coast project, kind of midway down the list there. So these are the specific projects listed in the ordinance, and the estimated costs of those projects of those operations in 2002 dollars. So this was as was written in the ordinance. This is the same chart in today dollars or in 2020 dollars. So what's happened here, you see the amounts are significantly different. There are a couple of things that have occurred. One, normal inflation. So this is 2020 dollars as opposed to 2022 $2,002. So you're seeing the time value of money here. You're also seeing, particularly within our operations in the coaster, a reflection of the actual operating costs of the service. The prior chart was projected operating costs, not actual operating costs. And so this chart reflects what it actually costs to operate the service as we look at it today. So this is a projection of the 8.1 fund for transit operations. And as you can see on the left, the total cost of the expanded operations for both MTS and CTD as planned would be about $2.2 billion between now and 2048, while the revenue projections currently put the amount of funding available to be at approximately $1.3 billion. So there's roughly a $936 million shortfall in that fund if the services planned are implemented. And just for clarification, these are planned service enhancements. So it's added service within both systems that this fund is meant to support. Based on these numbers, the 8.1 funding stream would projected to be expired in 2030 rather than the desired 2048. So there's a significant shortfall that's designated by the yellow line, which peaks as the fund gains a balance, but then as those operations kick in and start to be put into service, goes negative in roughly 2030. So as these discussions continue, as I mentioned earlier, there are two things going on right now. There's both the discussion around changes to the Transnet ordinance and discussions between the agencies around how to address the shortfall in the 8.1% category that I just described. A core theme that has surfaced in these discussions, particularly through Sandag and the executive director at Sandag, is a lack of support for projects within North County, and a recognition of equity within the region for the funding and a desire to change what has been the traditional 70-30 split of funding sources for regional funds. And so as we're having these discussions and as we're considering how to address these shortfall, there is a lack of support for the projects that are in North County. And so part of our wanting to present this to the board today is to, one, bring this information forward to you, but then also make sure that as those that are participating in the Sandag conversations and are having a voice within that conversation, that you're aware of the issues and how they might impact both NCTD and our operations, but more broadly, the North County residents as a whole. We wanted to point out, because we don't often get a real good chance to show you the real regional impact of our service, and particularly our rail service. So we pulled together a few facts around our rail service in Coaster. So as you can see here, the Coaster service, and this is a stat we've talked about previously, 53% of Coaster riders earn below $100,000 household income, and 1 in 3 earn below the regional medium income. Not only are they not high income earners, they're relying on the Coaster to get to work. 78% of riders are using the Coaster to get to work. And that's a positive thing for the region because it's saving the folks within that corridor about 1.4 million hours a year in traffic congestion time delays. And so that's helping everybody, the fact that these folks are riding the Coaster. Coaster happens to be the region's most effective reducer of VMT. 1 passenger equals a little bit more than 26 miles of vehicle miles traveled reduced in the region, and that's a major regional priority. And so the Coaster is our most effective means for reducing VMT in the region. And NCT's rail operations in general, both the Coaster, the Sprinter, and then the freight services we support, reduce CO2 emissions of greenhouse gases by about 14,000 tons a year. and 1 million gallons of gas saved. So these are just a few of the impact of the rail operations have on the whole region. So it's not just a North County impact, it's a regional impact that our rail operations are having. So as we've gone through this discussion, NCTD has made some proposals specifically on how to address the shortfall in the 8.1% designated for transit operations. And that suggestion is to maintain the 70-30 regional split and allow the transit operators to adjust their service plans to meet the available funding. So there was about, as you saw in the previous slide, about $1.3 billion in available funding. So what we've proposed is that you split that available funding 70-30 between the two agencies, and then allow the agencies and their boards to decide how to apply those funds to the right service levels. We think this has several advantages for the region. It extends the funding through the end of Transnet through the 2048 and balances the funding stream. It reflects the populations of the service areas within the 70-30 split. There's a very strong precedent for the 70-30 split, both within the Federal Transit Administration and within the Transnet ordinance itself. It aligns with the current projected operating cost based on Sandag's most recent model. So the chart I showed you earlier with the projects listed in the ordinance and the projected costs, this percentage would be consistent with those percentage costs between the split between the agencies. And most importantly, it gives the operators and their boards the ability to manage their systems in a way that's right for their customers and their constituents. So it allows this board and the MTS board to apply the available funding and design the service offerings in a way that meets that funding. So next steps. So Sandag, NCTD, and MTS are actively meeting to develop a solution to address the shortfall in the 8.1% of the Transnet funds for transit operations. Those discussions are active and ongoing. They started in October and will continue this month and into next month. NCTD is also going to request an extension of the Coaster MOU. So the NCTD and Sandag entered into an MOU in October for the operation of the expanded Coaster service that started on October 25th. To start that service, there was an MOU executed with Sandag for 6 months to maintain the funding stream that was designated within Transnet. And so we will be seeking an extension of that MOU to make sure those funds remain flowing while these other two issues are resolved. And then the Sandag Board of Directors is considering the proposed changes to the Transnet ordinance overall. They've said their potential action would be spring of 2022. They haven't published a specific timeline or specific proposals, but that's what they have indicated would be their target date for implementing these changes through the Sandag Board. That concludes the presentation, and we'd be happy to answer any questions the board may have.
And just one quick point, Mr. Chair, this is on the agenda as other business. There is possible action for the board as it relates to this agenda item.
Okay, thank you. Board Member Rodriguez.
Thank you. Can you go back to the slide that shows it showed, the GHGs offsetted. It showed how many millions of hours. Yeah, this one right here. Perfect. Okay. This appears a bit misleading from my perspective. When you look at our ridership, which is on page 31 of our agenda packet, showing only 34,974 boardings in October, which is down sharply from September, which in my calculation is only 600 unique people per day. Can you confirm that for me?
I don't have the topper in front of me. Let me go ahead.
So this was based upon pre-COVID ridership. And so it is not trued up for what is happening during this period of a pandemic.
Yeah, so council member, you're looking at the October ridership, or actually the October ridership numbers. Those aren't, traditional numbers or historical.
Well, even
numbers.
if we look at pre-pandemic, which was about 4,000 boardings per day or 2,000 unique people per day, we're talking about a fraction of individuals that have to go to and fro. Yet we're given all this funding and resource and value to that fraction of a fraction. I'm trying to comprehend that logic in our decision-making as a board here in North County.
Yeah, and I think what this slide is attempting to demonstrate is that value isn't just in the folks that are riding on those particular days. It's actually a regional impact. So the 1.4 million hours you see there saved in congestion relief, that's not for the folks on the system. That's for the folks that are on the roads as well. That's region wide. Same with the GHG reductions. Obviously, that's not just the folks who ride, that's everyone, as well as the 1 million gallons saved of gas. That's also region wide. So ridership is one indicator definitely of our performance, but there are many others, and that's what this slide is intended to show. And these numbers are normalized operations. So most of the figures you see here are from 2018. An annual look at 2018. So they are what we would consider normalized numbers, pre-pandemic numbers. So more of an indication of our traditional ridership than you've seen in the last year and a half. And I would just say, just generally, for policymakers, making decisions based on ridership in the last month or in the last 20 months would be very misleading, because it's not an indication of what ridership was prior and where it will go in the future. These are very extraordinary times.
Okay, well, I completely disagree with everything you just said. Just so you know, and I'm coming from the perspective when I make decisions for this region, I'm going to look through the smoke and the mirrors and the underlying assumptions that are put on cute slides like this. And look at ridership.
Board Member Rodriguez, that's fine. We have several other items that we're going to get to today, and you'll have plenty of opportunity to criticize the public transit. So let's move on to Board Member Gasterlin.
Thank you very much. On this slide, I do have one question. The 26.4 vehicle miles traveled per passenger. Does that mean that most passengers get on in, say, Oceanside and off in Sorrento Valley, or on in Solana Beach and off in San Diego? Is that what we're seeing here? So since the coaster is 41 miles long.
Yeah, there's 41 miles entirely. So this takes into account, both the onboardings and the offboardings throughout.
Is there a histogram of ridership per mile somewhere where, where people get on and where a given person gets on and gets off?
So what we do have is origins and destinations. We can't connect the individual discrete person, i.e. Terry Gasterlin got on at Oceanside Transit Center and got off at Solana Beach Station. In the future, with the new fare technology, that's one of the goals that we want to be able to do, is to connect the person's origin to where they got off of the train.
So how do you calculate a number like 26.4?
So 20. So this.
That data.
Okay, so first, this information is sourced from the National Transit Database. So this is part of the audit that we undergo every year in terms of data that we have to report to the federal government. So it's not a made-up number. So it's a summary of the total number of vehicle miles traveled by passengers on board the trains, divided by that number of people. The dynamic for this, which is significant for the coaster, is that the history of the coaster has always been a rail line that just was started with inadequate infrastructure, and that was going to be improved over time. And unfortunately, the improvements for the first phase happened during the COVID period. This number reflects the fact that, I'm going to quote, if I can remember exactly, but that we constitute about 6% of the total rail hours operated in the county. So that's MTS and NCTD, Sprinter, all combined. And we reduce about 20% of the VMT with a very sparse service. I mean, so we've historically shared with the board the significant gaps that you have between service more than 3 hours that really are negative towards people choosing transit more. So that's what this number all boils down to, that even in that nascent form of a substandard service that was being improved, the coaster was still, from an efficiency point of view, the best thing that we have in this region for reducing vehicle miles traveled.
Okay, Matt, I'm going to push a little bit. So 1.4 hours in traffic, 4 million hours in traffic delays, 1 million gallons of fuel, and 14,000 tons of CO2 emissions, all derive from the number of passengers times the average vehicle miles traveled that passenger is traveling on the train instead of in their car.
I didn't say that.
Unless you have, no, that's a given. That's a given. And 26.4 vehicle miles traveled has to be derived from somewhere for boarding and exiting per person. Otherwise, you're using an extrapolation. I'll take this offline, but I would challenge, I'd like to know where you get the 26.4 vehicle miles traveled per person.
Yeah, we can provide you that information, but just for clarity, what you stated, I said I didn't say. I spoke only to the passenger VMT, but let's have that conversation offline.
Yeah.
We can talk through this.
And my other question is the coaster MOU that was established for 6 months, is that in our packet? If it is, I'll go look for it. Otherwise, can you send it to us?
It is not, and we can make it available to you. Mayor, another important point that that in terms of this particular slide and the statistics here is that this also takes into account the freight operations as well. So obviously our rail right-of-way supports significant freight operations. And so a portion of what you see here is a result, as it notes, of freight operations through Lausanne and the Lausanne operations. So the Amtrak trains and the Metrolink trains who come into the region.
Great. And last question, do you have a diagram like this for the Sprinter?
We could produce one. We've only produced it for the coaster, but we have the same statistics for the Sprinter, yes.
Okay, thank you.
Board Member Desmond. Board Member Desmond.
All right, here I am. I was 5 minutes into it. Now I got to start over. Okay.
Good.
Yeah. And Chris, thanks for the presentation. Appreciate it. And, it's really kind of frustrating that, where North County, I don't think is getting its fair due, particularly with Sandag and the Transnet ordinance, the half-cent sales tax that we're paying until 2048. It specified certain transit for the funding for the North County's coaster services. I mean, it was in the ballot language. The funding should remain as promised and not be changed. I realize there's some shortfalls, but we still should be getting our percentages, that were promised with that. And then the new 2021 regional plan projects currently promised to the voters and outlined in Transnet for North County, particularly along the I-5 and the 78 corridors, could be removed altogether. So I think the residents of the North County are getting the short end of the stick, and that we'll be on the hook to pay for many of these projects that are promised in North County, and they're not going to be delivered. Particularly if they change this transit, the projects in there coming up, as you said, in the spring. So I think it's really important that we, as elected representatives of North County, I think we got to stand together with this fight to ensure that, that the people who live and work across North County, receive their fair share of the regional plan, and that these potential amendments to Transnet don't kill transportation projects in North County. There's a lot of talk about Sandig and their complete corridors. They want complete corridors. We all got to make sure, that we together present a strong, unified voice, that we don't get, we won't get balanced transit and roads and other improvements that the people in North County are going to need and are promised. So it's very upsetting, I guess, to me, the fact that now Sandag wants to change Transnet, even though taxpayers are going to continue to pay until 2048 for these projects. And that they want to, I've even heard of Santa Crata say, NCTD shouldn't even exist and he said this publicly, that, that should be merged with MTS. MTS is actually getting the lion's share of that 8.1%. I think much more than the NCTD is getting their fair share of that. So, I'd like to see, kind of a united front to here at NCTD that, that to actually have staff, draft a letter to SANDAG that can be signed by North County elected officials, EDCs, chambers of commerce, whoever we can get to sign on, that outlines our major concerns, including our support for funding commensurate to what was originally included in Transnet, and the prioritization of North County projects that were promised in Transnet, and the prioritization of funding and work for transit to complete the corridor projects for North County. We seem to be left behind all the time, and unless we come in as a united front, and we have at least sign a letter that we agree that you don't shortchange North County, don't shortchange North County Transit District, don't shortchange our corridors. We want to be heard and listened to, and not everything going elsewhere. So, I still think, the Delmar Bluffs and everything else is a high priority, but that's going to be last on the list for many cases. So I'll make a motion that we draft a letter for North County to sign on to, ask staff to draft it and send it out, make sure we all agree with it, that we want our fair share, we want our complete corridors, and we want what was promised to our voters.
Thank you. Board Member Jenkins.
Let me make sure there we go. So Matt, what happens, or Chris, basically we've been promised these funds. We've made numerous contracts, signed into contracts for many millions of dollars. How do we, if these funds don't come in, how do we undo our efforts? I mean, we're supposed to be improving transit. That's what we've been doing. How does that all, if this doesn't go in our direction, how does that all happen?
Well, some things you can't unring the bell.
Right, exactly.
And that was one of the points. We've already ordered the new 2 train sets. The manufacturing of those trains are underway, and they're going to be delivered in either late 2022 or early 2023. The double tracking projects have already occurred by and large. And so those costs have already materialized for themselves. So it's an important thing that even if you don't want to fund in the future, you still have these costs that need to be paid for. The other caution and point that I will make is that, we're all subject to federal and state mandates. And the truth of the matter is, this whole process of the transportation system transformation, that the North County folks are going to have to really be focused in on the fact that we're going to want to make sure we have a first-class transportation system. NCTD is not in the business of having discussions pitting roads versus transit. We've always been super duper supportive of complete corridors. My past career at Virginia, I was responsible for statewide transportation demand management, public transportation, interfaces between road and transportation projects. I think there's sometimes a misunderstanding about public transportation. We're not trying to sell it that it's going to be the end and all for every single trip, but it is part of a complete transportation system. And regardless of which city you sit in, you will have constituents who will benefit whether they use or don't use the public transportation system. And this discussion really turns on something basically kind of simple. We're paying into a tax. And the simple question is, should North County residents and taxpayers get their fair share of the tax? Other issues can be debated, but that's just a fundamental that the taxpayers passed this legislation, passed this tax, and they identified these specific projects for which we're paying into a countywide sales tax measure.
Thank you. I have 2 more comments. I made a couple notes which seem appropriate for this discussion that Jim Linthicum made. He mentioned partnership is good for the region and problem solving is important. I just hope that mentality happens at Sandag, because it will not be good for the region if we have to backtrack on some of what we're doing. And my other comment is I would second Supervisor Desmond's motion. That's it.
Great. Thank you. And yeah, it's, I think one of the things about this particular presentation and the conversation surrounding the Transnet is you know, this issue of equity and whether the taxpayers in North County are getting their money's worth. What Chris didn't put in the presentation was the ballot question that voters answered in the affirmative with a supermajority included a specific mention of improved coaster services. And this agency has been working for years now to acquire the equipment that would provide the reliability to increase the service and headways so that people could count on a coaster train running approximately every hour off peak and every half hour on peak. And so the investments in double tracking, new locomotives, you know, refurbishing of coach cars and cab cars, the 2 new train sets that Sandag is buying for us. These are significant investments in a commuter rail service that this board, not these people on the board, but this board 27 or so years ago committed to with the acquisition of the rail corridor and providing the commuter rail service. So, you know, there's certainly going to be plenty of debate over the years. There always has been a lot of debate about, you know, the amount of ridership and whether it's worth it, et cetera, et cetera. I know Del Mar wants the train to die. And they have stated they're willing to take it one at a time. So first coaster, then Pacific Surfliner, and then BNSF. But you know, right now the likelihood of any of that happening is really low. So maybe we could continue, get the funding that we were that the voters were promised, and put in place a service that people can choose to use. And then you know, post-pandemic, with decent service in place, let's check the ridership numbers. But I would ask that we circle back in about a couple of years to see where we're at on that. Once we have the new train sets and once we really have a decent service that people can depend upon. So I fully support the motion by Supervisor Desmond. And I would ask that you know, we get as many signatures on that as possible, because I think on a regional level, it's really important that we make a sound argument about the equity issues with regard to changes to this ordinance that's going to essentially take money that was promised to North County and invest it in the urban core of the city of San Diego. So I appreciate everybody's support on that. Board Member Rodriguez, do you still have your hands up from the first time, or did you want to speak again?
Yeah, I wanted to just briefly say one more item, and I appreciate you bringing up that ballot language. You know, there's 97% of us rely on these roads that were promised, especially on the 78 I-5 area, and they're breaking those promises. And I will not support heavy rail train. You know, I don't care if we bought a train. It's a money pit, and until we get our act together on a region and meeting those promises of voters, I will not be supporting funding for heavy rail. It's a waste of money, in my opinion. So
those decisions have already been made.
Chair,
I don't
Chair,
think being
point of order, Chair.
We've heard that.
You've interrupted me twice now, Chair, and I'm just trying to make my comment.
We're going to move on. We're going to move on. Vice Chair Edson.
Yes, thank you. So could we look at the screen with the proposed solution? Okay. So it talks about allocating the available funding, 70% MTS and 30% NCTD. And we've discussed the fact that this is an historical split. and that there's strong precedent for it with both the FTA and Transnet ordinance. And a question I asked quite a while ago is this 70% split reflective of population between MTS territory and NCTD territory? And what I heard back was pretty much, yeah. So to me, it makes all kinds of sense to literally demand, as we're softly going to do with a letter, that that split continue. And I'm not looking at just the coaster. I'm looking at the Sprinter. I'm looking at our buses in North County, and the pilots that are coming to offer flexible fleets and microtransit to help better serve our communities. We're in the business of getting people from where they need to go, from home to work, from home to school. And it doesn't change based on where you live. We just have to continue on our mission. And so I support Mr. Desmond's recommendation, and just wanted to make a note of, also, I think we're trying to go for 15-minute headways, not just hour headways. And as has been discussed over and over at Sandag, at Transportation Committee, in our meetings here at NCTD, at LoSAN, frequency, reliability, that's what drives public transit, and also is what will eventually, I believe, bring people to ride more public transportation. There's been significant investment to get us to the point where we can offer frequency and reliability. We just need to keep moving on. Thanks.
Thank you, Dr. Bhat Patel.
Yeah, thank you. I think definitely we do need to send, a strong message that North County is a place that needs to be, invested in and focused on. We've been doing what we can, and we've been providing our fair share. But I do think that this is something that, again, we mentioned that the voters voted on, that we should be getting allocated. And I think overall, and I think Vice Chair Edson mentioned this, and really we need to make sure that we're doing what we can to actually invest in all of the different levels of transit that we do provide. And in order to make sure that we can provide that connectivity, in order to make sure that we do increase our ridership over the next couple of years, it is going to be incumbent to actually receive this funding. So I think it's really important that I will be supporting that motion. I also want to say that it's going to be important that if it does pass, that we as board members do as much as we can to advocate at our city level and ensure that, our other colleagues are signing on as well, because I think it really is important for us to do what we can to advocate for our residents and for anyone who wants to have the option to take public transit in our region. So just wanted to make that comment, and looking forward to supporting that motion.
Thank you. Board Member Gaslin.
Thank you. I have a few remarks. First, I have a point of clarification on the motion. Is the motion to write a letter for this 70-30 split, or is the motion to write a letter more generally for funds, Sandag funds, Transnet funds to flow to North County? Supervisor Desmond.
It would be for both, be honest with you. I think, the 70-30 split and the Transnet promises. So I'm going to leave it to staff to kind of draft it. But I do think we have to be looking regionally at all of North County. And, I support moving the train. If you want to put the Del Mar Tunnel in there as well, I think that, I'd be happy with that. So I think we'll leave that up, but I got to tell you, I don't want to exclude roads. And I'm not going to say that 78 has to be specifically named, but we also need our road monies and our road projects that were part of Transnet. So I don't want to scare anybody off of this, but it's transportation for North County, including transit and the roads. So we want to make sure our transportation projects get funded, is really, just to be honest, the kind of the wraparound of that. But I guess I'll leave it up to staff, and we'll see their draft letter, and maybe we comment on it before it goes out.
Yeah, and for clarification, Supervisor, so the first item in the proposed changes to the Transnet ordinance was the entire expenditure plan. And so your comments, I think, are right on point in terms of the notion of the letter not just being focused on one area, but the fairness throughout the entire consideration of the whole entire expenditure plan.
Yeah, and it's transportation everywhere. So it's not, like I said, I'm trying to advocate for the whole system that North County needs. And so I guess we'll leave it to you, Chris, to draft it. We'll take it apart then. Okay.
Okay, with that point of clarification, I am in 100% support of Supervisor Desmond's motion for this letter, including mentioning the Del Mar Tunnel. And my second comment, I want to challenge Chair Kranz. Del Mar is not against the train. Del Mar is not trying to remove the train. Del Mar is not against the train, one type of train at a time. 4 out of the 5 council members in Del Mar have voted for railroad relocation. We are fully behind and recognize that the train is a critical part of our infrastructure, including the low sand corridor. Railroad relocation is what we've been talking about. So I take offense at you saying Del Mar wants the train removed. We do not.
There you go, taking offense, bringing up the fence. There you go. But your challenge is accepted, but not at this meeting. So we can certainly.
Well,
take it
you
off.
said it, you brought it up. I am correcting you.
Well, and Dan Quirk has certainly advocated for the.
Who is sitting here today? It's me,
I'm just telling
and
you,
I am correcting
and
you.
I didn't speak to you personally. I said Del Mar, but meanwhile, the most important aspect is not to argue over the, how many riders are on the train and that sort of thing, and what that slide said with the pretty pictures. I think that the focus should be on North County getting their fair share of the Transnet ordinance, and that changes that are currently being proposed threaten that. So I'm just trying to kind of shift the focus back to that particular issue. We are a transit agency that is very dependent upon the promises that were made in that ordinance, and the voters approved it by a supermajority, and it's been a critical part of our planning process for years. So, I'm just saying, let's make sure that as elected representatives of citizens of North County, voters in North County, transit riders in North County, to include rubber wheel vehicles, we need to continue to advocate for equity in the way that this tax is being allocated, and the 70-30 split is an important part of that.
Okay, we're in agreement on that. And snide remarks about Del Mar are not welcome, and they don't help. I have a third comment. Now, my third comment is because I'm 100% in agreement with you. We have to think about rubber on the roads. So Del Mar is 10 miles from the Home Depot in Encinitas. If I want to get there right now by bike, it will take me an hour. Of course, I can't bring anything home unless it's small. I can go get a screw. It is an hour and 15 minutes by bus. That includes a 20-minute wait in the Encinitas train station as I change buses. And I've done it. And it also includes 3 hours by foot. Don't want to do that. And by car, it's half an hour. And that's our real problem in North County. We have gaps between the buses go slow, and it's always faster to go by car. And that's why Supervisor Desmond, including the roads and the road improvements and maintenance, is so important. And there are people who depend critically. I depend on getting to the bus to the UCSD campus. Why? Because it's ridiculously difficult to park there. So all said, even though the bus is slower than driving, by the time I go door to door, I'm better with the bus. That's why I have the 101 bus behind me. I ride it. So I'd like to hear going forward that some of our board members do get on these buses and try it out. And when you need to go somewhere, before climbing in your car, see how long it takes you by bus or by train, and think about how that translates into improving public transportation efficiency here in North County. I am fully behind this letter. Thank you.
About 3 weeks ago, I took the 101 to the UTC. It was a great ride. We had a great driver. It was remarkable how ridership picked up the closer you got to UCSD. young people are going to save the world. Their willingness to take public transit is a key part of that. There's no question that Del Mar, Solana Beach, Encinitas, and Carlsbad are auto-centric communities. And so, bus service in those communities is unlikely ever to be a replacement for your car, unfortunately. But we're working to make improvements where we can, and micro mobility solutions may be an important part of that. The future, there are all sorts of questions about how things are going to shake out in the future, and we got to be an adaptable agency for that reason. Board Member Contreras.
I really appreciate the conversation that we're having right now. Unfortunately, right, it's stemming from this real issue that we're having with our funding, which is already, not enough. So I am in complete support of voicing that opinion, on a more unanimous front from this agency. But I think that it seems like there's widespread support for us advocating. So what I want to add to the discussion is we need to ensure that any kind of letter that we are drafting, that, we all want to sign off on, and we want to be able to gain more support in our individual cities, that we're really focusing on what our vision and our mission is for North County Transit District. Because it would not be a good look for a transit district agency to, I think even get into mentioning, more things that, don't further our mission. So we need to make sure that it stays true to what we're trying to do here as a board, which is good return on investment for taxpayer money that is going to connect our communities to those places that they need to go. So that's from their house to, Mayor Gasterland, Board Member Gasterland made a great illustration of the difficulties that our constituents, our residents have on a daily basis. And as a service, if it were a free service, I would say this is the type of transportation that we have is great, but it is a paid service. And I think we are failing our communities by not advocating wholeheartedly for the mission of this district. So I'm glad to hear that, together we're brainstorming, thinking about how we can bring our individual perspectives and ideological beliefs and fold it into something that has common ground support. And I don't want us to stray away because we do have different ideological philosophies between the board members. And that shouldn't be the number one thing that guides us in this document. The number one thing should be the common ground issue, which is our transit system needs to be better, and it can be better, but we definitely won't get there if we don't get that funding. So I just want to, make sure that we're focusing on that mission. And the other thing, another part of this equation is that we have sprawled out way too much here in San Diego County, and which is why it's been difficult to kind of bring the pieces back together, because we've had runaway sprawl. And that means that our taxpayer money also gets spread out so thin. So, some of the things that we're doing here in North County Transit District, like, looking at our own properties for high density or affordable housing, right? This is all part of the same equation. So yes, it's 100% important that we advocate that at minimum we get what we're promised for this 30% funding, but also, that we don't make this letter just another part of the political and ideological conflicts around Sandag, and transit in general. So that concludes my comments. Thank you.
Mr. Tucker, did you have a comment?
I did, but I will defer my comment to Marnie.
Board Member Wilbert.
Thank you, everyone. And it's been a lot to hear this conversation. It's important that we hear it. Down in San Diego, I'm not on the MTS board. My colleagues are, but I know that they too are also disappointed in the fact that the Sandag projections are nowhere near what the voters thought they would be when they voted on the Transnet. I also know that we have a unique opportunity as leaders in this city to decide what we want to do going forward, because promises were made in 2008, but a lot's changed since then. And a lot of our priorities may have changed since then. And a lot of our residents may have changed what they need depending on the amount of time they sit in traffic, or the amount of pollution they inhale, or the amount of drought we're seeing, or wildfires due to climate change, which affect all of our residents here on this board. But I'm obviously a non-voting member of this board, and it's important for me to hear what our two regions are doing to think about with our Transnet dollars. I mean, we do have plans to expand the coaster and the Sprinter all the way down to the San Diego Convention Center. And so that could be a game changer for the way we see ridership on some of our trains as well. But I will take this back. I'm listening and hearing everyone out. And I also have to say that this is sadly my last day on the board. I have been swapped out. We had a new council president vote. And now Joe LaCava, Councilmember LaCava, will be taking over my seat, which honestly makes a lot of sense, since the transit district really does go through District 1 in La Jolla and Torrey Pines much more than D5. But I will miss all of you. But I know I'll see you at other events. But I have to leave soon, actually, to go to a domestic violence awareness event. So I just want to say thank you all for having me on the board this year, and know that I'm still here if you need anything. And I hope to be at the grand opening of some of our major projects soon. So thank you.
Thank you, Board Member Von Wilpert. I very much appreciate the comments and your service on this board for the last year. It was legislation that Mayor Gloria had passed at the state legislature to add the advisory position from the city of San Diego, and it sat empty for a year. So having you join us is appreciated. Mr. Tucker.
Okay, I think I can do this right. So my intent is, based upon the significant feedback, is to come back to the board with the draft letter in January. I will tell you, we will emphasize the importance of the transportation system. Just as a reminder for all of the board members, one of the key initiatives that we're not talking about a lot because we're in the study phases is how we can improve the road network to support improved Breeze bus operating speeds. And that is actually the title of the study, the Breeze Speed and Reliability Improvement Study. And a key piece of that study is reconfiguring the road network to support increased speeds of public transportation. And so truly, from a practical perspective, it's about the transportation system. And that's how we have to understand that we don't design within a silo transportation projects. They all are system-based. And that's the perspective I intend to work towards drafting a letter and bringing that back for the board's consideration in January. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Okay, excellent. So with that, Anthony, let's vote.
All right. On the motion of Board Member Jim Desmond, seconded by Board Member Sharon Jenkins, to draft a letter of support in favor of the 70-30 split and Transnet funds for North County projects. So I want to make sure I have that motion correct.
Board Member Desmond, you okay with that?
I don't know. Say it again, Anthony. I apologize.
The motion will be to draft a letter of support for the 70-30 split and Transnet funds for North County projects.
Well, okay.
And support for railroad relocation in principle, not in funds.
Well, that'll be in the letter.
So, okay, I get it, but it was support funding commensurate to what was included in the original Transnet ordinance and prioritization of North County projects promised in Transnet and prioritization of funding and work for transit and complete corridor projects for North County, including the Del Mar Tunnel.
So can we make it simpler?
Sure.
Just authorize the executive director to draft a letter for the board's consideration in January.
You better be good, Matt. Okay.
All right.
Okay, on the motion of Board Member Jim Desmond, seconded by Board Member Sharon Jenkins to authorize the executive director to draft a letter of support to present to the full board in January. Board Member Bob Patel, how do you vote?
Aye.
Board Member Gasterland?
Gasterland for Del Mar, aye.
Board Chair Krantz?
Yes.
Board Member McNamara?
Aye.
Board Member Rodriguez?
Rodriguez, yes.
Board Member Desmond?
Aye.
Board Member Jenkins? Believe you're on mute, ma'am.
Aye.
Board Vice Chair Edson?
Aye.
Board Member Contreras?
Aye.
Motion passes with all board members present voting yes.
Excellent, thank you. Appreciate the conversation and look forward to the letter on the agenda in January. So with that, we will move on to informational item number 19, which is going to be a presentation by Sandag staff member Bruce Smith, which will detail the low sand corridor Del Mar Bluffs stabilization projects. He will be with Ali Duval, and they have been very busy bringing the Del Mar Bluffs Phase 5 project to 60% design, and now going to share some of the details of the project along with an update on the Bluffs emergency repairs. Are you there, Bruce? You're muted.
Good afternoon, NCTD board. Just adjust the light. Yes, Ali and I would like to give a presentation on the progress we've made on the Del Mar Bluffs. And because Ali is far more in tune with the day-to-day workings and development of the design, I've asked her to make this presentation. So I will hand it over to Ali, and I'm here to support Ali and answer any questions at the end of the presentation.
Thank you, Bruce, and thank you, board members, for having us here today. So as Bruce said, today I'll be providing an update on the Del Mar Bluff stabilization projects, starting with a brief update on the progress of construction of the emergency repairs, and then moving into an update on the design of phase 5 of the stabilization efforts. So in general, the Del Mar Bluffs project area encompasses the 1.6 mile stretch of the low sand corridor that runs atop the coastal bluff between Coast Boulevard and Torrey Pines Overhead Bridge in the city of Del Mar. The emergency repair that's currently underway is located just south of 4th Street and circled in red on this graphic. Next slide. In February of this year, a 1910 era seawall was undermined by wave action, resulting in the collapse of the seawall and the fill slope behind it. The photo on the left was taken 2 days before the collapse and demonstrates the exposure of that foundation that we believe ultimately led to the collapse you see in the photo on the right. Next slide. So since March of this year, construction crews have been working on the emergency repairs. The majority of stabilization work, including installation of bluff top soldier piles, subsurface drainage, construction of the soil buttress, and seawall installation have all been completed. Over these next couple months, crews will be working on storm drain and surface drain installation and beginning the process of revegetating the slope, which may take up to 18 months. The slope will be vegetated with native plantings and hydro seeding and will be temporarily irrigated to ensure adequate plant growth. Next slide. So now move on to provide an update of the next phase of work, which is Del Mar Bluff Stabilization Phase 5. The project area encompasses the same 1.6 mile stretch between Coast Boulevard and the Torrey Pines Overhead Bridge. And the purpose of this project is to protect the track bed from ongoing erosion and maintain a stable track bed for up to 30 years while the long-term plan of relocating the track is implemented. Our design approach focused on 3 main components: measuring and reevaluating bluff retreat or erosion over the past 25 years, determining the global slope stability, both static and seismic, and reviewing the capacity of all existing drainage systems. Next slide. So to ensure the stability of the track bed and plan for anticipated erosion, the design team has developed a comprehensive stabilization plan, including bluff top work originally envisioned in Delmar 5, and work at the bottom of the bluff to combat wave action and sea level rise, which was originally planned in Delmar Bluff 6. The plan comprises of a combination of stabilization improvements that focus on the areas of greatest vulnerability from both bluff top and bluff toe erosion, as well as seismic activity. This plan view of the project area provides a high-level overview of the proposed stabilization approach. I'll walk through them one by one here. Our retrofit areas are shown in yellow. So these are areas where we need to install additional features to protect the soldier piles that were installed in previous projects and improve those factors of safety. These features include a combination of grade beams, which are small concrete beams between the top of the soldier piles that won't be immediately visible, seawalls, and filling and grading behind the seawalls in some areas. It's important to note that these piles installed in Delmar Bluffs 2 and 3 were designed for a 20-year service life about 20 years ago. They are shorter than the piles we put in currently, and they need to be protected from potential exposure and undermining. We also have our new stabilization areas shown in light blue. These are areas where new soldier piles are needed to protect the track bed and provide adequate factors of safety against sliding and seismic events. And another key element of this plan are the seawalls, which are necessary to protect the toe of the slope. As the toe is eaten away by wave action, the slope becomes oversteepened and is at greater risk for erosion events. Seawalls help slow down this erosion process and protect the existing piles from exposures and undermining. The existing seawalls on this graphic are shown in brown, and the proposed extension of the existing seawalls are shown in dark blue. Next slide. So throughout the project area, individual stabilization areas have been prioritized and ranked as high, medium, and low based on various design parameters and risk of erosion. This graphic demonstrates the ranking system throughout the most northern segment of the project, with new and retrofit stabilization areas shown in red, orange, and yellow to represent the priority ranking. Additionally, areas where we're proposing to extend the existing seawalls in conjunction with bluff top improvements are shown in blue. There are also some upper bluff walls along the east of the track shown in purple. These work in conjunction with the proposed drainage improvements. It's a combination of a small integral wall in the drainage channel itself, transitioning to a rock scaping of the slope adjacent to the channel to stabilize the slope and prevent material from eroding into and clogging the drainage channel. Next slide. So these next few slides include visual simulations to help clarify the scope of the project and to provide a view from the average beachgoer's vantage point. We're going to start at 13th Street and move from north to south through the project area. So the existing condition at 13th Street is shown here. This includes a seawall protecting a portion of the toe of the slope. There are also soldier piles in this area installed in previous stabilization projects that are not visible as they're buried adjacent to the track bed. Again, these are shorter shoulder piles that were installed in the early 2000s, and improvements in this area are needed to protect them and also improve the seismic factor of safety. Next slide. So this shows the proposed solution in the 13th Street area, which includes extending the seawall, partially filling at a 2-to-1 slope behind the wall where needed, vegetating the slope, and installing an unexposed grade beam between the piles. This solution leaves natural features in place as much as possible while still stabilizing the track bed and the bluff toe. This next area from 11th Street to Shippey Lane poses a unique challenge due to the berm of material west of the tracks, which has shown active erosion in recent years.
I don't think the slides are matching what you're presenting.
This is showing this. Are you seeing the cross-section view of
soldier piles?
Yes.
Okay, that's okay.
Yes, so sorry, this is, we do have one cross-section in the middle of the series of visual simulations. So I do apologize, that was a misnomer there. So in this area, we previously considered different alternatives, which was included removing this berm west of the tracks, which is overburdening the slip plane and lowering the factor of safety. Although removing the berm that would increase the factor of safety, it does not increase it enough to meet our design criteria for static and seismic factors of safety. And so therefore we have refined our solution here and are proposing to install soldier piles in the highest priority areas throughout this section of the bluff. And the solution meets the design criteria, provides a higher factor of safety for the track bed, and avoids some of those visual impacts, and allows the berm to continue its natural erosion process. Next slide. Okay, so moving south here, we have the 7th to 8th Street area. So the existing condition is very similar to 13th Street and includes a small seawall and soldier piles protecting the track bed. This is an area of concern because this is where a freight train went off the bluffs in 1940 after a large winter rainstorm caused extensive erosion. We also have an existing fill slope in this area. Again, the piles that were installed here were installed in the early 2000s, and improvements are needed to protect them and also improve the seismic factor of safety. Next slide. So the proposed solution in this area includes extending the seawall, partially filling again at a 2-to-1 slope behind that wall, and vegetating the slope and installing a grade beam between the piles. Again, this accomplishes meeting our static and seismic factors of safety and providing that long-term stability while leaving more of the natural features in place. Previously, we had proposed a full grading of the slope here, but we have determined we could still get the same 30-year service life by reducing the limits of grading and still accomplish our factors of safety. So further south, we have the Anderson Canyon area. This is just south of the current emergency repair. We have an existing seawall here supporting a fill slope, and we do have some existing soldier piles in parts of this area. Next slide. So here we propose extending the seawall between the existing structure and the current emergency repair seawall. So again, protect the toe of the slope and those older soldier piles. There'll also be new soldier piles installed in this area to improve the seismic factors of safety. Next slide. Another critical component of the stabilization efforts is to improve the drainage and control the storm and groundwater in the project area. The photo on the slide demonstrates the critical need for drainage improvements, as this is where water eroded the track in 2019, resulting in an emergency repair at that time. As part of this project, a drainage study was undertaken. We reevaluated the capacity and determined the needs for new drainage improvements, including new outlets, improving inlets, enlarging trackside ditches, installing under drains, and localized slope stabilization east of the tracks to protect these drainage structures. Next slide. So this slide is just a high-level overview of the drainage improvements in the northern sector of the project. There are significant improvements proposed throughout this project, including new concrete ditches with some localized retaining walls to protect and support those ditches, new underdrains to capture subsurface water, improved inlets at street ends, some new storm drains and outlets to the beach, and notably the drainage structure near 12th Street, the chute, we will be replacing that and removing it. Next slide. So here's an overview of our project schedule. We have reached our 60% design milestone and are currently just making some final updates to those plans. We have been working with the Coastal Commission on our federal coastal consistency certification submittal. We expect to have that completed very soon. We plan to hold a public workshop in early 2022. And ultimately, the goal is to bid out this project mid next year, fall of next year, and get to construction very early in 2023. Next slide. So these last few months, we've really been focusing on coordination and progressing the design. We have ongoing coordination with the California Coastal Commission staff to complete that federal consistency submittal. We've also been working with the city of Del Mar to respond to their questions and concerns and keep them updated on the progress. And in progressing our design, some of the things I went through earlier, the visual simulations I showed you were the results of our design progression and reducing the natural impacts to the bluffs by limiting the amount of grading we're doing. There are still a couple areas where we do have to grade the full slope of the bluff, but we have been able to reduce that significantly while still maintaining that 30-year design life. And we have switched approaches in the trench, and we've gone with the alternative to install piles to meet our factors of safety there in lieu of removing that overburden material. And overall, this comprehensive approach stabilizes the train tracks on the bluff and provides time to plan and build the long-term alternative of the tunnel. And that completes my update for today, and we will take any questions you may have. Thank you.
Thank you. Board Member Desmond.
Thank you very much. And thanks for the presentation. I always enjoy the updates on this particular item. I noticed in Sandag's regional transportation plan for the Interstate 5 Coast Corridor projects that, I know it's a project ID TL06, which basically is Oceanside to downtown San Diego, build the Del Mar Tunnel, add stations at the Mobility Hub and at Camp Pendleton, and grade separation at Leucadia Boulevard for $2.8 billion. It says it's all going to be completed in 2035. Is that, to me, that's wishful thinking, but are there plans in place for the Del Mar Tunnel with a completion date of 2035?
Ali, let me help with that question. As you know, the regional plan is a plan.
Is that a yes or a no, Bruce? Is that a yes or a no?
I'm going to give you a political answer.
Yeah,
so we have a regional plan, which is it's a document that has everyone's desires in it. And as we all know, it typically takes longer than we plan to deliver such a major project, as we saw with Sprinter and the Midcoast project. But we are working on the high-speed study for the Los Angeles corridor at the moment, or our planning department is. We're working on conceptual alignments for the tunnel in Del Mar and for the tunnel in Miramar. We're working on double tracking projects. We're working on the Bataquillas Lagoon double track, the San Dieguito Lagoon double track.
I'm not asking about those, Bruce. Okay.
Yeah, but the tunnel, so we are hoping to get money in the next fiscal year to take the tunnel through environmental clearance.
Okay, so you don't really know when it's going to be done is what I'm hearing. So
no, if I had all the money tomorrow, I could make that happen pretty well. I would have a really good shot at making that happen.
Well,
but it all depends on when the money comes to us.
Well, and that would be a more honest answer than this 2035 that I see here. But okay, thank you.
Remember Gasterland.
Yeah, thank you. First, I really want to thank Bruce and Ali for all the hard work in this. This plan has evolved from when you very first showed it to us in the city of Del Mar in July. In that one, there was a scary decapitation of the bluff. And I take that as a great example of working together to figure out what's the real goal and how can it be done in a way that has minimal environmental impact. And at not much more cost or perhaps the same cost. And Bruce and Ali, I have to thank you for figuring that one out. Another one that is in here is the seawalls with the 2-to-1 grading, so much less grading. And so I'm going to ask a question I've asked you before, but I want to hear it again. So how many linear feet of seawalls are in this plan?
So new seawalls in this project, we have 2,098 feet of new seawall planned for this project.
And how many total will that be then?
That will be 3,216 feet total of seawall between the existing and the new extensions of those seawalls in this project.
Great. So about 3/4 of a seawall, 3/4 of a mile. So half of Del Mar bluffs will have seawalls along them. Thank you. And my new question is, you showed us a slide with the upper bluff walls and drainage. It was rendered in purple. And I'm wondering if you could go back to that slide. Please go back further. It's on, yeah, next to Seagrove Park. That one there. So these upper bluff walls, have you been here all along?
Yes, that is, it's been refined exactly the type of wall, where we need to put them and how much we need to do throughout the project. But this has always been a part of it. It is, as I mentioned, it starts as kind of an integral wall built into the channel. It's only a couple feet tall. And it does transition to, we do have some soil nail walls with rock scaping just adjacent to those channels. And we do have a break there at Seagrove Park where you can see the wall breaks where that existing vegetation is. And then we also have the same soil nail wall with rockscaping continuing on that right side. And this is in order to get these drainage channels in there, we do not have a lot of space, and these are very steep bluffs in some of these areas. In order to avoid impacts to the residents that are there by building this channel, and to ensure that we don't get a ton of erosion and bluffs coming into those channels and blocking them up, we do need to do a small wall. The slope of it varies based on the slope of the existing bluff out there.
Good. And so this will start construction, you're hoping, in 2023. And at the same time, there's a fencing proposal for 6-foot tall fencing right in this location. Is there any synergy between the two projects? Are you talking? Is there environmental study and erosion interface studies happening?
I'll defer that to Mr. Tucker.
This presentation is strictly on the Delmar Bluffs project.
I understand, but what we're seeing is retaining walls that start at 2 feet high and then get quite high on very steep bluff faces, right where 6-foot fencing is going to go in prior to all this construction.
Okay. I see no other raised hands. With that, I would like to thank Ali and Bruce for your presentation, and like Board Member Gasterlin said, your significant effort on this project. So thank you all very much, and enjoy the rest of your holidays.
Thank you. And
Thank you.
Happy holidays to everyone at NCTD.
Thank you. All right. Before we go into closed session, let's take those items that were pulled from consent. Board Member Rodriguez, do you want a presentation, or can you ask a question that for item number 15?
Yeah, this is my first, can you guys hear me okay?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, this is my first board meeting. And so looking at this and looking at consent, has staff done a presentation based on this audit finding to a committee or to the board? I'm really surprised, first of all, to see this on the consent calendar.
So this is just, there's going to be a separate report that the board will receive from our auditors. I think that's what you're referring to, the auditors. They will be coming in for that report to the board, I believe, in January. And I am planning, Board Member Rodriguez, to reach out to you to try to bring you up to speed as much as possible on the operations of the district. This is an annual report that goes in context that goes along with that report, but you will hear separately from our independent auditors in January.
Okay, so this annual financial report, being voted on a consent calendar, what you're telling me is we could pull this and put it on a future agenda when it will be presented to the board, and we can spend more time to focus on this audit, because there's some pretty important findings and pretty surprising findings when I read through this that greatly concern me, and I think the board should weigh in on several shortcomings and deficits that were forecasted, and greater government subsidy is going to have to offset. And so I can break it apart now and we can go into it, or you could pull it and put it on a future agenda where we can have a more formal presentation.
We can, but for clarity, there's no findings in that report whatsoever. That's not what that document is. It is just it is just an audit. It is just the end of the year statements from the district with the budget. And I would suggest to you that it would be helpful to you if we provided a separate briefing with you, and we are more than willing to put it on the board agenda. Typically, this item comes out either at semi-annually or quarterly updates related to these items. There is nothing significant in this report, but more than happy to put it back on the agenda. But this is not a report that contains any findings whatsoever.
Yeah, I get what you're saying. Findings from an auditor, but what I'm showing is, okay, we have fair revenue, we have actual, we have budgeted. There's a variance of negative 58% in fair revenues. I mean, you go down, I mean, just down the board, there's a lot of really impactful financial findings that are just basically being presented. And I just think that the board should have a more formal presentation. So I would just like to make a motion to pull this item, have it come back on a future agenda where we can spend a little more time on these important numbers.
No
I'll
worries.
second that motion. Gasterland, second.
Okay.
Okay.
Anthony?
Yes, sir. One second. On the motion of Board Member Christopher Rodriguez, seconded by Board Member Terry Gasland, to defer item 15 to a future board date to hear a future presentation. Board Member Bapato, how do you vote?
No.
Board Member Gasland?
Yes.
Board Chair Krantz?
No.
Board Member McNamara?
No.
Board Member Rodriguez?
Yes.
Board Member Desmond?
Yes.
Board Member Jenkins? I believe you're on mute, ma'am.
No.
Board Vice Chair Edson?
No.
Board Member Contreras?
No.
Motion fails.
All right, I move we receive the report.
I'd like to make a motion to do a weighted vote, please.
Hearing no second, I will move that we receive the report.
I'll second
So
it.
I'll second the weighted vote.
Yeah. One of us.
Okay, are we ready for the weighted vote?
On the motion of Board Member Rodriguez, seconded by Board Member Terry Gasland, to have a weighted vote to defer item 15 to a future board meeting to hear a presentation. Board Member Bapato, how do you vote?
No.
Board Member Gasland?
Tiny Delmar, yes.
Board Chair Krantz?
No.
Board Member McNamara?
No.
Board Member Rodriguez?
Yes.
Board Member Desmond?
Yes.
Board Member Jenkins?
No.
Board Vice Chair Edson?
No.
Board Member Contreras?
No.
Somebody getting out a calculator?
Motion fails. Weighted vote comes to 44%.
Okay, thank you. I move that we receive the report.
Second, Edson?
Okay. On the motion of Board Chair Krantz, seconded by Board Vice Chair Edson, to receive the audited financial report for fiscal year 2021. Board Member Bapato, how do you vote?
Aye.
Board Member Gasland?
No.
Board Chair Krantz?
Yes.
Board Member McNamara?
Yes.
Board Member Rodriguez?
No.
Board Member Desmond?
Sorry. Nope.
Board Member Jenkins,
Yes.
Board Vice Chair Edson,
Yes.
Board Member Contreras.
Aye.
Motion passes.
Mr. Tucker, what meeting do you anticipate the auditor will be presenting their findings at?
January, and I don't anticipate any findings to be presented.
Well, they'll do their fiduciary duty and
Yes.
present the.
Yes, sir.
audited- Yes, and so all those who wanted to have a presentation in January, there's the chance. The auditor will probably bill us by the hour, but ask a bunch of questions at that meeting. So with that, we will move on to item 16, and I cannot recall who pulled that, but do you want a presentation or do you want to ask a question?
Chair Krantz, I was the one who pulled it, and I'm prepared to simply ask a series of clarification questions and details.
Okay.
Great. I have read the report quite carefully. So I'd like to start with the Delmar Bluffs 5 line items. Delmar Bluffs 5 has 1.0 million in 2023 and 2.4 million for capital improvement programs in 2025. We know that the phase 6 has mostly moved into phase 5. So for that 3.4 million total, is that going to be moved forward into 2023 as the Delmar Bluffs 5 progresses?
Well, just long and short of it, what you see in our capital improvement program matches the broader grant that we got with Sandag and ties into the committed timelines of NCTD providing funding to support the completion of the project. So it's not the project schedule, it's the project schedule of NCTD providing the share of funding that we agreed to provide for the project.
Okay, so it's the original timeline and is not aligned with the new design of the bluffs then. Okay, thank you. My second question is about the right-of-way fencing. There is $350,000 in 2023 for right-of-way fencing and $500,000 in 2025 for right-of-way fencing. That is $850,000 in right-of-way fencing total. What fencing is that?
It's Tracy has more details.
I don't actually have the details, but we have fencing all along the right of way that we do, and it's a standard line item to have funding for fencing within the project, within the capital improvement program.
And does any of that money, is any of that money delegated toward fencing in Delmar?
I can't speak to it because I don't have that in front of me, but potentially it could be. But again, the impetus for the fencing project in Delmar would require board approval. And that is not something that's on the table today.
Okay, but this is potentially money for fencing in Delmar.
Again, I don't have the answer.
Okay, so we do not know. All right, my next question is about the electric bus budget. 6 of 9 diesel buses are going to be converted to electric in June of 2022. The amount of money allocated to that is 1.325 million. If we do the math, that's $221,000 per bus. Is that about right for the cost of an electric bus?
The project for the most part has been funded. That's the remaining funding needed to complete the project.
Okay, so what is the cost of an electric bus?
$1 million.
$1 million, okay, thank you. Next question is about hydrogen buses. So both electric buses with batteries and hydrogen fuel cell buses are effectively electric by the time the bus hits the road. However, it's very different ways of getting that energy into the bus. So I'm interested in understanding the cost of a hydrogen fuel cell bus. This budget includes $9.6 million for 15 buses. That's the funding so far for hydrogen fuel cell. It also includes funding for a hydrogen fuel station. And it was not clear how much infrastructure investment there is in the CIP to create the hydrogen bus fueling station. How much is that number?
The hydrogen fuel station was budgeted in fiscal year 2022. We received $6 million from the California Energy Commission. And our NCTD was also able to match $2.7 million from the Low Carbon Transit Operations Program. So that project is already completely funded.
Okay, so that's completely funded and that cost is 13 million. So that compares to the 85,000 for the electric bus charging station. Is that 85,000 also residual?
Those are battery electric chargers. The charging station is under a different project.
Okay, so the charging station for electric, is that, how much is that, just ballpark?
$120,000 per bus.
Okay, compared to 13 million for the hydrogen fuels charging.
No,
station.
the budget for the hydrogen station is set up for $8.7 million.
And Board Member Gastelum, you're asking pretty big sweeping questions that I think we would need to give you a separate briefing because you're talking about two different programs. The
Okay,
battery
so
electric.
I have one question left.
Let me give you a little bit of insight so that I don't want people to walk away confused.
Okay.
Battery electric bus pilot consists of 6 buses. The hydrogen bus project is a program to fund up to 50 buses. And the scale and scope of those projects are dramatically different and contain different project elements. And so those have been in different capital improvement programs. Some of what you see in this is residual funding for matching purposes over the number of years that the project would be developed. We're more than happy to come back and give more detail about these programs, but I don't want people to walk away misunderstanding that these are broader programs and that the answers we're giving are not intended for comparisons between the hydrogen versus the battery electric bus program.
Okay, so I have one last question for clarification. 25 hydrogen buses by 2025 are in this CIP. And the projected amount needed is 96 million for those hydrogen buses, with 9.6 million funded so far in this CIP. So by my calculation, that's about $3 million per bus for a hydrogen bus. Is that about right?
No, ma'am.
Priya Bhatt Patel wants to be promoted to the panelist.
It's $1.2 million per bus. And again, that's why I said these are broader capital improvement programs that we're talking about.
Okay, thank you. Those are my questions. Given that some of the fencing funding may well go into Del Mar fencing, Del Mar will not be voting yes on this particular CIP.
All right, very good. Board Member Desmond.
Hey, thank you, Mr. Chair. Hey, say, Matt, I just want a couple clarifications on this item 16. The 512 million for state of good repairs in the bottom paragraph of your the first page of the presentation says that excludes the Del Mar Tunnel and the Carlsbad Trench. Are those projects being fully funded by Sandag, or why the note of the exclusion?
So there are certain projects that are supposed to be delivered by Sandag under their requirements 1703 for capacity enhancing projects. So typically when you see our capital improvement program, which you see a capital projects that NCTD is directly responsible for delivering, in some instances, you'll see some line items where we're contributing to other projects that others are delivering on our behalf, like Sandag. So that's why it's written to specifically exclude those elements. But the question you raise also opens up the fact that if Sandag doesn't fund some of these projects that are identified in Transnet that were assumed, for example, like Bridge 243 in Del Mar, Bataquitos Bridge, then if they don't provide that funding, then NCTD will have to provide that funding for those projects or help to identify the funding for those projects.
Well, good luck with that. Also then on the next page, you've got a list of all these different projects, and I'm assuming that they add up to that 512 million. I just had a question on the 32.4 million for the replacement of 2 locomotives and bi-level car purchases and overhauls. Is that part of the, I don't know, the 5 train sets, or what? Or is this another additional replacement? I remember like there was 5 train sets that Sandag was going to pay for a while back, and is this part of that, or where is this money coming from?
Yeah, so
So you'll see the line item that is described as coastal expansion equipment. Those are part of that 2 train sets that were funded by Sandag in 2019, but the monies do not come all at once. So we have to program the repayment of those train sets as the money comes in. So that money is still part of the Regional 2 train sets.
So are we confident that that money is going to come through, or do we know?
It is programmed through Transnet to be funded.
Program,
Yes.
but if they change,
That's a major corridor.
but if they change Transnet next fall, or I'm sorry, next spring, does that put these at risk?
No, these are committed dollars. They're from varying sources more than just Transnet. In fact, I don't think there's a significant amount of Transnet money in these projects. There was, I'm going to give you an acronym, but it's CMAQ, Congestion Mitigation Air Quality Improvement Funds was an element of that. I think we might have changed the color of money related to that. There was local partnership program dollars in this program. So there was very little Transnet money within this overall program, but it's a Transnet funded project.
Okay. All right. I get it. I got it. I just wanted that clarification. Thanks.
Welcome.
Thank you. Board Member Rodriguez.
Thank you. I was also going to pull this item before Mayor Gasolin pulled it. This is a capital improvement program, but yet we don't, we're not having a presentation and it's on a consent calendar. So can you give me an explanation on that? You gave me one for the previous item, and now I'm asking for an explanation on this. How come there's not a more thorough presentation for the board before this is on a consent?
Great question. So we did discuss this with the chair and vice chair. This item is going to come back to you all next year as part of the budget process. But there's also a bigger overarching issue, is that this current budget does not include the impact of the bipartisan infrastructure bill that was passed. And at this point, we don't have the financial impact from formula funds that would flow directly to NCTD. So what the intent was not to do this presentation twice, but to come back to the board once we do have those updated numbers from the bipartisan infrastructure deal that we can incorporate and we can fully show you this. Plus, we will walk you through kind of the capital improvement program process so that you can understand exactly how projects get selected.
So what exactly are we voting on today then, if it's going to come back? I'm trying to understand why a staff presentation wasn't warranted is what I'm trying to get at.
So the intent right now is that we have to submit a document over to SANDAG so that they can begin the work that they have to do in terms of the transportation process. So we have a timeline that we need to meet. But this does happen on an annual basis, that we submit a capital improvement program to SANDAG. That capital improvement program is subject to change ahead of our board adopting our final capital improvement program. So traditionally, yes, we would have this on the agenda as a discussion item, but for the reasons I previously stated, that's why it's not on the agenda this month.
All right. Well, from my perspective, I think that's unacceptable. I think that, everything you just stated makes sense, and we're adults, we're representing constituents, and you could explain some of this and explain the timelines, but just throwing it on a consent calendar, assuming that we're just going to say, yeah, go ahead, we trust you with this. I don't like that. I think that's unacceptable. I do have some questions and concerns. Obviously, this will be coming back, I think, by June, as the staff report shows, and we can make some adjustments. And I understand the deadlines, and so you've got to make a decision on this today to get to SANDAG. But I'm showing constrained. The constrained amount for the next 5 years is 122 million, and the unconstrained is 512 million. There's a huge spend. And from what I just heard, it's tied to grant money and funding from outside sources on hydrogen facilities. And from an electric standpoint, there's only a spend of 1.4 million. So when I look at the next 10 years and I say, hey, what can we be investing in that our region is going to benefit the most from in the long haul? Would it be hydrogen? Would it be electrification? From my opinion, it's electrification. I think it's a little too expensive right now, and maybe we wait a few years to see how this rolls out. But investing so much into hydrogen, even though those funding sources are coming from outside, which kind of creates that carrot in our face,
I'm wondering, how is that going to impact us from transitioning to electric, since we have all this infrastructure created now? And what's the longevity of hydrogen over electric? And how is this all being taken into consideration for this CIP plan from your perspective?
So, Mr. Rodriguez, and I recognize this is your first board meeting. Many of the board members have been on the journey where we've had to develop kind of our plans associated with our transition to zero emission bus technology. There's lots of details around this. We were required by state law to develop a transition plan. The important thing for you to note is we're going down both paths. The battery electric bus program, I can assure you it's far more than $1.2 million. The decision right now to advance hydrogen bus is that hydrogen bus right now is operating at a much more efficient clip than battery electric buses. So one of the core fundamental principles is today we operate a compressed natural gas bus. That bus can stay in service 300 miles without being fueled. A battery bus can only do about 125 miles without being fueled. The hydrogen bus can meet the 300 miles requirement. And one of the things we have to be careful about is understanding the operational impacts of a bus that will cost us essentially 2 buses or more to perform the work of 1 bus today. This is something that's a work in progress across the industry, but we do see more of a trend of people who've tried battery bus first, moving towards hydrogen bus because of the reasons that we've said from a performance point of view. But I'm more than happy to spend time with you to walk you through kind of some of the prior discussions and work that we've had with the board that supports the decisions that are in the capital improvement program today.
Okay, so just your comment about you're spending more than 1.2. I'm looking at page 127 under the unconstrained baseline showing years 2023 through 2027, and it's only showing a line item of 1.4 million under 2023 toward bus electrification.
Right, and again, that's why I said I understand, because you're walking into this for the first time, so you don't understand our budget process and how capital planning spans over a significant number of years. So in the prior years, those line items showed up for the battery electric bus. They're not in this budget because it's already been previously funded, and the work for the battery electric facilities are already underway. So they've already been budgeted, already been approved, construction contracts already been awarded. That's what I'm reflecting is you're seeing a snapshot of the go forward without having the ability to look backward.
Okay. All right. Well, the other board members aren't bringing, and maybe there's some that are bringing this up. These are just some items I noticed. Again, there is a level of newness that, I'll familiarize myself with, and I appreciate that. Hopefully other board members have opinions on this and maybe they're fully comfortable with this and understand it. So I'll wait to hear what they have to say. Thank you.
Yeah, and I would just, add that the challenge of a board that meets once a month, we have to decide how to manage the agenda so that it isn't a 8 to 10 hour meeting or whatever. And I'll take responsibility for deciding that we would put that on the consent calendar and then come back when we had certainty over all of our funding sources. But I would also encourage you, your questions are great. And I would encourage you to meet with Mr. Tucker and his team as needed to feel comfortable. You may not ultimately agree necessarily with decisions that the board has made in the past. Obviously, you'll have an opportunity to weigh in the future. And that's great. But for this particular meeting, we made the decision to put it on consent, and we're not trying to hide anything from anybody. And it's especially important that we have public deliberations over these issues, because we want everybody in the public to have the opportunity to hear and learn and speak to these matters. So, I would encourage you to get with Mr. Tucker and his team, and your questions will be received by him and at future meetings. So Board Member Gasterlin.
Yeah, thank you. I have a follow-up question. I want to preface it with one of the things I bring to the table here on this board is 6 years as a staff scientist with the Department of Energy. And that has kind of given me some perspective to be able to look at things like trade-offs in electric battery buses versus hydrogen cell buses. And I'll challenge a little bit, Mr. Tucker. Volkswagen did extensive studies, and the bottom line is now that electric buses with batteries are 70 to 80% efficient, where hydrogen is 25 to 35% efficient. What does that mean? It means the energy going in to charge those miles traveled are that much more overhead. And so this translates into my question, which is, what does NCTD anticipate as the source of the hydrogen? And is this CIP budget going to create the stations needed for that hydrogen? Is this even a sustainable and feasible approach to fueling the buses?
So for the early phases, like most entities, we are going to have the hydrogen is going to be trucked in. That's the most efficient thing for us to do at this stage of development of the hydrogen technology. To go back to your prior comment, I'm stating exactly what the manufacturers of the buses state when they provide you the buses. The operating range from the manufacturers of buses that produce hydrogen buses is 300, and it's the 125 to 150 that I said for battery electric buses. And we can back that up by the studies that have been conducted, performance, for which I will have Damon send out to you over the next couple of days. So Volkswagen may say this or that, but I'm telling you what we are seeing actually on the road in the industry. For clarity, I think we want to go down both paths. And if we're hoping battery technology can improve over time, but here's what is at risk in the short term is the inefficiency and impact to customers, which is one of my paramount responsibilities, is making sure that we minimize the impact to customers and to our operating budget as we make this transition.
Well, I'll say one thing. Electric buses, no matter what source of electricity, are a lot quieter than diesel. So I look forward to that.
Yes. So I would entertain a motion on this item.
Edson moves.
All right.
Bhat Patel seconds.
Okay.
On the motion of Board Vice Chair Joel Edson, seconded by Board Member Priya Bapatal, to approve consent agenda item number 16. Board Member Bapatal, how do you vote?
Aye.
Board Member Gastelum?
No.
Board Chair Krantz?
Yes.
Board Member McNamara?
Yes.
Board Member Rodriguez?
Rodriguez, no.
Board Member Desmond?
Yes.
Board Member Jenkins?
Aye.
Board Vice Chair Edson?
Aye.
Board Member Contreras?
Aye.
Motion passes.
Okay, thank you. And with that, we'll move to closed session item 20. And there is one. And as a reminder, we are going to sign into the second Zoom session that came with your with the information that Anthony sent earlier. So we'll log out of this one and connect to the closed session link, and then we'll come back to this one to close the meeting.
Chair Kranz, I want to make sure Delmar is recused on this. The NCTD attorney has directed that Delmar does not participate in this closed session item.
Okay, thank you. And with that, Lori A. Winfrey, General Counsel of North County Transit District, will take us into closed session.
Thank you, Chair Kranz. So today, the board is going into closed session pursuant to Government Code Section 54956.9, subsection D1, conference with legal counsel related to existing litigation, Surface Transportation Board petition for declaratory relief.
Okay, thank you.
Funny.
Anthony.
So the board is returning from closed session and there is no reportable action.
Okay, thank you very much. And Mr. Tucker, it's your executive director's report time.
Thank you, sir. I do want to mention a couple of things. First, the first of 30 new Breeze CNG buses went into operations today. That's very good news. Once all 30 of those buses are in service, the average age of our fleet will move from 9.1 years old to 6.8 years old. A bus is typically replaced at NCTD after 15 years of service. I want to mention and thank staff for their efforts on the Holiday Express train. The 2021 Express train completed its final run last weekend. Sellouts crowd of more than 9,000 took part of this year's Holiday Express, including 150 military families from Camp Pendleton who rode as NCTD guests. Huge thank you to everyone at NCTD who helped make the Holiday Express train possible. Nearly every NCTD department played a role in planning and executing the event, and volunteers from around the district gave up their weekends to help staff make it a success. It was truly a team effort. I know they saw board member Kranz and his family there last Sunday, and I know he enjoyed that train. The last thing that I'll mention is free rides on New Year's Eve. That is the traditional service that NCTD and MTS provide that will begin after 6 p.m. on New Year's Eve, December 31st, 2021. So with that, that completes my report. Looking forward to the new year. Wish everybody a safe holiday season. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Are there any board member reports?
I have nothing to report, but it's Jewel, sorry.
All right.
But I would just like to wish everyone happy holidays, however you celebrate, and that it's all full of love and light and happiness. See you in January.
Very good, thank you. And I would like to follow up on Mr. Tucker's report on the Holiday Express. I had the opportunity to have my two granddaughters, my wife and my son and his partner, and my daughter and her husband, and my daughter's mother-in-law. We all got aboard the train, and the joy on the faces of my granddaughters, 1 3 and 1 5, was worth twice the price of admission that we paid. So keep that in mind next year, Matt. Maybe jack up the price of the tickets a little bit. We got some fare box recovery shortages we need to make up. So it was a great event. The geniuses who brought who put Elsa and Anna in costume on the train, that was definitely the highlight of the girls' trip. There were some very talented choralers that were there. Santa Claus was talented and did very well with all the kids and parents. And that we had a bonus. Some award Father of the Year attended dressed up as Blippi. And I don't know anybody if you've got kids, but Blippi is a kind of obnoxious dude that teaches kids about all sorts of different things, but he is a real favorite of youngsters. And so my girls, once again, my granddaughters had a good time with him, and he was nice enough to make his way about the train so that other kids could enjoy his costume. So it was really a joy. And like Jewel, I would like to wish everyone a Merry Christmas, Happy New Year, and we will see you all in January. Anthony, do we have any remaining public communication?
We do not, sir.
All right, this meeting is adjourned to the next meeting of January 20, 2022 at 2 p.m. Thank you, everybody.